peers.
He hasn't won anything like Basic has, like obviously the GSC winners, Lumarpin, Skipayas have, but he's someone that has been so consistent. He's been top 10 on ladder pretty much the entirety of the set under a different name, which is why some viewers might be a bit confused.
Nadim?
He had Nadim before, which is why he has that hidden identity, trying to keep some techs a little bit hidden for at least a few days at least. But we're going into game one, 5 games today, 5 games tomorrow, no reset in the points, so everything you do here today does matter. Usually just being among those players that qualify to day 2, that's all you need, but this time points are actually going to be very, very relevant here.
Yes, we are going to be starting off here with Kenobi, a player recently relegated from the Hex League. And one of those interviews I was making was with Kenobi, and a player that has said that, he's not that confident with 7.5. Had it been 7.0, he would have been so happy to play these finals because he knew he would be in with a chance. I think for him, he's just trying to not finish last with what he said to me, kind of paraphrased. So again, a player that has a lot of their sights set on towards set 8 and beyond that. But for now, he's just here to get that experience and hopefully pull off a very good performance to surprise himself.
And we are seeing a tier start here for Kenobi. Maybe in set 7, players would say, all right, it's an 8th, but this time around, AP has found its place in the meta in a big way, especially in the early game. Kaisa, of course, with a Shimmer start, extremely oppressive with Lagoon as well even. And then we have the late game boards, the Fast 9 Dragon boards, which all want to utilize the Archangels, the Shojin, the blue buff in the case of Acel. So definitely not a bad place to start. A chain is dropped here as well, but early game is going to be so important for this set in TFT. We know how relevant it is to kind of get a very good augment, a very good direction, and just try and beeline your way to a fast 8 or fast 9 comp. And I think compared to most of the sets, have a pretty good idea of what you want to play for, what your goal is for this game to have a top 4 performance or even a first, especially with this very stacked field. There's just absolute pressure all the way through.
Yeah, absolutely right. And again, the meta on this patch and the previous patch has been a bit different from some of the other tournament metas that we've seen. Right? We are now seeing more people go for re-roll. Speaking of base camp, no Olaf inside. The items not necessarily leading.
But a Lilia, though. What about Lilia reroll, Wida?
I mean, yeah, Lilia reroll. That could be the angle, to be fair, right? You do gain the Lilia from base camp now, has been brought down, so that it's just a Lilia, quote-unquote. But is going to go with the cybernetic implants. Just a very good catch-all. Augment can kind of do whatever you want it to do.
Has a Karma 2, has an Edge Roll 2, so 2 damage dealers. Would have loved to have maybe a frontline upgraded instead. And the one awkward thing though for Kenobi is that tier start means that once you pick Cybernetic Implants, we were talking about the direction at 2-1, you're locked into a certain amount of comps. Olaf reroll, you're locked into Xiaoyu Siphon. You're no longer looking at most of those AP comps because you don't really want to play for AP when you have already that AD boost instead off of the augment. But Kenobi finds the Volley Bear, one of the most important units in stages 2 and 3 because it's usually the harder unit to have to get that Shimmer skill online with a Kaisa and Jax. So Kenobi now just praying that he's able to find those next few Shimmer skill units and try and get that Shimmer skill start, that Econ start to go into a fast 8 board with that Vertical Jade with maybe the Siphon and the Pantheon.
Absolutely here. So again, also the early Slayer to protect this Vow, right? Instead of trying to spread out the components to try to get more value out of that cybernetic implant here, is going to be making this Protector's Vow, which as an item kind of can do whatever you need it to do, right? It's not necessarily an item that gives you a ton of direction anymore. Like at the start of the set, we have the Dark Flight situation going on, not necessarily what's going on right now. We do have our augments on screen as well. You can see here Tiamat being picked up for Crescent, right? That's an interesting one. But we also have scope weapons from Darkest, so maybe a little bit of contest going on right there. We have seen players try to use scope weapons one with something like the Xiaoyu Siphon composition instead, but very
right
often,
away, the augment picks already, say so much about what these players are thinking about, what kind of direction they're trying to go in, and what playstyle even as well. Jeweled Lotus for Lulu, she's going to go fast 9 trying to get that Dragon board online because that is essentially a 4th item for your Aoshin, for your Acel. Extremely important. Ging might be contesting the Xiaoyu board, has the Knife Edge too, might just be a Warrior board with Olaf or Yone. Overall, just very strong augments. I think maybe Axiomark is the one that's a little bit harder to pull off unless you know what you're doing. Everything else is pretty strong, is among those top augments.
Yeah, and we're going to see Cannoneer Nomsy, right?
That's
one of the big talking points, right? They were talking about how, 4 and 6 Cannoneer has received the buff, so whether or not that's going to be enough to push, Nomsy back into the meta as a primary carry, like these Cannoneer comms, or if it's going to be a rotation into the Darkflight aspect, as we do see Darkest here is going to be picking up that role.
And a very high-tempo Zeke slam there as well, trying to make sure they're able to get that win streak going in Stage 2. Extremely relevant to, again, Econ does so much because there is that fast 9 meta. Everyone knows that dragons, especially if you get a 4-dragon board, that is going to get you top 4 guaranteed, especially if you 2-star those dragons. So Econ is, I think, a little bit more relevant than it has been in the past, especially with traits like Shimmer's Skill, like Astral, and like Pirate's Mirage sometimes.
Yeah, right, Nick. And to the point where the Zeke's Herald could definitely also be, a clear, sign of intent in terms of being able to say, I'm going to go for this aspect of it. And for Dark Flash right now, we have kind of seen it being the Rengar that we're talking about on the desk being the primary way of utilizing Dark Flash right now, but who knows, right? We might be going back into the fact that now when the more vertical aspect of Carnier is better, that it is going to be the Aphelios comp that's going to come out on top this weekend.
And Lelouch, I mean, if you're able to send a flare into the sky and tell the other players what you are playing, you have the Dual Lotus, you have the Archangels already built, you have the Econ trait trying to get that money that you need to try and go to level 9 with enough gold to still roll and still get those upgrades on your dragons. It's not an easy thing to do. So many players, even in Master rank that know a lot about TFT, aren't able to pull it off very consistently. But at this level, I think players know exactly what they need to do, exactly where to sacrifice HP to try and work on that econ, to try and make yourself, to put yourself in a position to actually make it to 9 and have enough gold to roll with.
Yeah, so now we're going to see the open components right now, of course, as always, brought to you by Blizzard.gg. Getting with an open bow, again, that's something that gives you a lot of opportunity here. He is going to be taking the belt, so, that could just be, an early slam of the Surratt portal, which again is an item that has found really broad use across the entirety of the field in pretty much every composition. There was a period of time where that was just the best option no matter which front end it was. No longer really the case, but still a very nice item to start juggling that aggro. And Matt was talking about the action mark being one of the harder ones to pull off here. He is going to be on this Astral Opener. He's just going to start getting that gold ecom rolling in for that. So just chilling for now, not going to go 5. He's at 30. He's going to go 30, 40, 50, 60. Fantastic base to work from.
And of course, with Astrals, there was that change a few patches ago, which makes it a little bit harder to 2-star your Astral units. There's a bit more of a bias towards getting that gold reward instead of the unit reward, which is why maybe a lose streak is more common. Despite it being an econ trait, for a lot of set 7, this was actually a win streak comp because you're able to 2-star your Astrals early on, and you're going to be incredibly strong all throughout stage 2 simply because of that extra bonus in HP and in stats overall, despite the units not really having any effect on the trait outside of the AP. In this case, not so much. Harder to 2-star your units, and we're seeing it why here. Despite the buff to Lux, though, maybe, just maybe, Weeda, is this going to be a Lux reroll game?
I mean, I was watching good old-fashioned Kevin Parker yesterday. I was watching a stream, chilling, after we were done with rehearsals. And he was playing a pretty good setup with, he had Nomsy Mage free, he had Lux free, all the good stuff. And he still lost to good old-fashioned Yone reroll because it had scoped weapons too. But again, this is not going to be a scope weapons game, because scope weapons games too, rather, sorry, should I say, because we don't have the Prismatic Opener. That is an augment that becomes a lot better as a first augment again. So just to see what we're going to be looking for here. Darkest again. We're talking about the scope weapons. Pretty nice in general here with the scope weapons 1, just to give that a little bit of extra range to Nomsy, for example. As we are going to be looking at what is going on here for Darkest. They are obviously one of the players that has been highlighted by our talent team as a player to look out for, a quote-unquote dark horse, the darkest horse, as I do believe Counterfeit did refer to them as. So
one of the most surprising players this set, someone that really, proved they deserve to be on this stage 100%, and I wouldn't be surprised to see them going all the way into day 3 because they've had great tournaments all throughout this set, and we're seeing it here, very much quickly identifying, hey, I have a chance to build Zeeks, I have a chance to win streak, I have a chance to put a cannon near Nomsy in, which is not something that is in the textbook. It's not in the guide, it's not on Reddit, it's not something that is clearly, a clear-cut way to win streak stage 2, but that's what we're doing here. 40 gold, 5 win streak, going into Krugs in a very good spot to, as you mentioned, with the Zeeks already built, Rengar is one possibility, but also maybe one of the strongest comps right now in the game is going to be that Seraphine, which prioritizes Zeeks as the first item you have to have if you want to play this comp.
Yeah, the priority has kind of shifted away from being the Morella, which was like the Alpha Omega for a while. The issue is also worth noting here that composition relies a lot on its augments, which right now, I don't think Scope Weapons necessarily is a bad augment for the comp. It just kind of, you would need something like Better Together, Preparation, Implants, Uplink, something like that. It's not that a Scope Weapon, it is a combat augment. You do need combat augments, but it's not high on the priority list.
We're seeing the items picked up there. The belt, and after you already have that one Zeeks, you can build more Zeeks, of course. You can also build a Morello on Seraphine, but really not the main thing to think about if you're thinking about this comp. You have the bow, going to be great on Graves. The tier as well can go on that Seraphine later on as kind of a secondary or tertiary carry in this case as well. But overall, very strong board here. Identifies very quickly, hey, Namzi's pretty strong. Cannoneer got a buff. Yone's very strong now as well. And let's build, again, even more tempo. Let's build that static Shiv.
Yes, and again, playstyles are going to be a little bit different right now as we do see Melee is going to be starting to hit some of their good old
Astral units is 3 stars as well.
Yeah, so we are playing 10 games total in this stage, right? So playing for first places, while it is going to be impactful, playing just regular old-fashioned tempo and trying to, you know, bleed out to a third, bleed out to a second might be better because you have that many more gates you need to perform in. The stakes are going to be lower for each game, but higher in the grand scheme of things, obviously. It does mean that something like this strategy, for example here, it doesn't give you clear direction in where you want to go necessarily, but it is going to ensure that you have a very strong mid-game. Paired with that early level 6 on 3-1, maintaining the streak here is the most important thing for Darkest as of right now, because if that streak gets broken, they're playing with suboptimal items, then this game becomes a lot harder to navigate.
And the Lelouch we saw there, oh, Prismatic for the second augment. We're going to have a spicy start to day 1. Guardian Crown is a possibility for some comps. Guardian, of course, got a buff from 4 to 6. Big buff, which is why we're seeing some of those boards. Instead of having 4 Dragons, you have just 6 Guardians and 1 Aoshin or 1 Aesol or 1 Ezreal in stages 4 until you're able to upgrade to something even better. But some Fire Cape, great pickup here.
Yes, and I love this level because the 4 Guardian Power Spike is one of my favorite mid-games to do here. Again, worth noting here, stays above 20 gold, which is going to be so important. The 4 Guardian you're talking about, the shield is so good. Obviously, it's not really part of the buff per se, but just a continuous shielding in the early game, there are very few comps in the game at this point in time that can even start chewing through these shields here, as Malala is going to be going for that reroll composition here from the Astral full reroll. So you might sack some a little bit of power in the early game and you just make it all back with extra items once you get those Astrals 3 stars.
And I love how players are just trying to tell us, hey, the stats don't lie, because Celestial Blessing is one of the highest pick augments overall, simply because it's very generically good for so many different comps. And we're seeing here 3 different players have picked Celestial Blessing 3 as their prismatic augment. We see a few crowns as well. Warrior Crown, very well perceived in the stats as well. Guardian Crown for 2 players, showcasing how important that buff was. But we also have Cybernetic Uplink for Unid, someone that is also, I think, going to try and go for those Dragon boards because, as you mentioned it, the same with Jewel Lotus. When you have these augments that are essentially acting as a 4th item for these hyper carries like Aoshin, it's going to make your board so much stronger. And if 3 players reach that 4 Dragon board, whoever has that 4th or maybe even 5th item in some cases will end up winning out.
Absolutely here again. Now we also have the full overview on screen here for you guys. Right, and again, nice little visualization here. And Crescent, as we're talking about with the Tiamat early on, the Warrior Crown as well, just going to help elevate into that, because sometimes with these reroll boards with the Warrior aspect, you can sometimes get stuck and you need to have one of the other synergy, but having that extra Warrior in there will help out quite a lot here. We do see Raiko Mastery's board here. Very much a board that, once you go the Warrior route, has pretty generic combat augments here with the Electrocharge and the Sunfire board.
But 2 augments that just worked very well. They give you immediate power. They give you, a chance to really stay strong all throughout the early and mid game, which I think is so relevant in this current meta in TFT right now. And in a tournament like this one, as you mentioned a little bit earlier, it's not so much about high rolling and trying to get first. It's a little bit more, Lux, not quite able to do it just yet, despite the buffs. I think it's a little bit more about trying to minimize your losses, about if you never get under a 6th place in this tournament, I can almost guarantee you will be going to day 3. It's about being consistent and trying to mitigate those bad games where you're going 8th and instead you go 6th. That's already almost like a win for some of these players. Yeah,
Madala here is going to take a 4-cost spat and be kind of happy with it. Getting another mage spat here in this comp is also a huge power spike, because it means that Raiko can level and then can go 5 mage without having to really cut any of the units that they want to keep in play. It's a very nice thing to do. Spats have kind of gotten back into priority, but it's more so the fact that they're still kind of out there. Now, Unit picks up a Seraphine and will be going level 7 with 30 gold here, but he's going to be rolling down here, try to stabilize if he can find his Lagoon pieces.
Matelas hits the Lux 3-star. I was wondering last night, going to sleep, is Lux reroll going to be viable? And already in game 1, we're going to have at least some kind of an answer here. Matelas doing the service for everyone that has that same question in their head. The buff came in. Lux was for unfortunate reasons, a little bit unplayable in the last patch. But now, after the buff, I think Lux can and might be able to actually do something, especially with that 3-star. This early on, we're not even in stage 4 yet.
No, also worth noting here, right, with 11 Astral, if I can do math correctly, again, math and broadcast, always a bit of a wishy-washy thing, you are going to be looking at getting both full items at 5% at a time, but again, getting a component 20% at a time is potentially super, super valuable. On average, it's 5.5 gold each round. That is so much value that he is now going to be getting here. And with double combat augment on top of that as well, the combat power for the composition here is going to be quite high. The big test is going to be 4-1, because, again, the gold right now is not necessarily there for Medela to start going towards the level 7. Might want to stay on level 6 for an additional round. And when everyone has that huge level 7 4-1 roll down that is so signature for the game of TFT right now, it has been for the past year or so, this is where that comp is going to get fully challenged.
And there's a Yone board. We haven't mentioned it yet. Mirage is going to be Executioner's Edge for this game. So very good for Yone. Very good overall. It's one of those Mirages that give you a lot of board power. And it's not, it's not Pirates. It's not Electric Overload. We don't talk about Electric Overload in this desk, at least today, or this whole tournament, I think. But Executioner's Edge is definitely one of those that you do want to be playing that does give you a lot of power on the Yone, on the Deja as well.
Absolutely. Here, Kenobi is also just waiting here for a bigger roll down on level 7 here at 46 HP. He's currently at the bottom of our lobby together with Matla, but where Matla has a clear direction as a board that is fully set up to the point where it is going to be set up, that is not really the case for Kenobi. Shimmer Scale is Goldmancers, an item that we didn't really get to talk too much about, and an item that has, for me, has been super game warping, especially on the previous patch. But now we haven't seen anyone go for the Kaiser reroll, which is, generally speaking, the biggest carrier of that item here. As Dark as a streak is going to get broken right into Wolves, however, he is going to be on 50 gold, so the loss itself, not necessarily horrible, but again, it is a lot of gold to miss out on.
And I have to commend Peter on his pick, Darkest as, well, the dark horse. It feels a bit silly to say this in this way, but I look at it right here, already proving that they've come into this tournament with a clear idea, with a clear, knowing the stakes, knowing the level of these players. There's no greeding out. There's no, trying to, play this game where you're on ladder, for example. There's just much more at stake here, and they know they have to really commit their items early and try and find the win streak. And in this position, with this amount of gold, level 7 already, they have to be in a very good position to top 4.
Yeah, is Holt the Seraphine transition on the bench currently right now with a Seraphine pair of Graves? Okay, so the base one is Raven's Axe. Okay, so the 5 Shimmer Scale one is going to be the Goldmaster Staff, which is why we haven't seen it. That makes a lot more sense, actually, to be fair.
Kenobi, Xayah 2. Xayah did also get buffed in this recent patch. 18% damage to 20% on the Feathers. Finds the Jax 2, big upgrade to stabilize, gets the Hecarim in as well for the Rage Wing. Is this board going to be stable enough, Wida, to try and reverse this streak?
There's a severe lack of attack speed steroids for Xayah here. I think that's the big thing. Outside of her own ultimate, there's not going to be any attack speed steroids. And again, with that, I mean the fact that that's what you're going to get from Rage Wing, obviously not the ability itself. It is going to do a decent amount of damage here. We're getting that 34 extra AD as well on top of it. The 20% damage buff on the AD ratios for Xayah is going to be something that is worth looking out for here, but I do believe that Medela's board right now is pretty strong.
In this matchup, the Bloodthirster actually popping off, shielding all the Lux damage, but like you mentioned, I think it might just not be enough. Xayah is trying to do it all by herself, despite the buffs, despite it being a 2-star Xayah at 4-1. In some metas, this is what every player was hoping for, but in this one, maybe not so much. We'll see as the tournament unfolds throughout these next 3 days. Silver Augment to, cool things down a little bit for this last Augment pick. We have the Pandora's Bench. The Exile is going to reroll. Finds a Swift Shot Heart, just straight up getting that extra attack speed. You already have a Xayah 2 and that Ezreal online. Hoping to find a Twitch maybe to get that guild bonus attack speed as well.
Yeah, and Raiko in the earlier game here did reroll his Augment on the first one when he picked the Sunfire board here. So Knife's Edge is pretty much a catch-all, which is going to be the case here. And with this composition that he's running right now, there's not going to be any loss of damage from moving the Olaf and the Yasuo, etc. up just to one slot. So that shouldn't be that big of an issue here. Nice little extra attack damage steroid for this Olaf that doesn't necessarily have best in slot items, but the thing about Olaf is that he can kind of use whatever items you are going to make. Ideally, in my mind, you're going for IE Hand of Justice and as well as the Rapid Fire Cannon, but if you end up with items that look like this, well, that could just be the case. And again, worth noting, this could be a 4-5 level 8 roll down to go for the Siphon Shiryu composition.
We're seeing a lot of generic augments, but we're also seeing a Guardian Heart from Darkest, maybe already looking to also show us what Styx Guardian boards look like in this current meta. So we're seeing, I think, a lot of questions that I had on my mind about how certain comp Styx Guardians Lux would do. We're already getting answers in this first game, so you love to see it. And looking at the HP totals, because this is the point in the game now where players have to start considering, hey, I'm not stable, I'm at 23 HP in the case of Kenobi. Something has to change here. Really, the only two players that are a bit more in danger are Unid and Kenobi. We're almost reaching the midpoint in Stage 4. But everyone else, especially in the case of Darkest and Ging, who got a Rengar 2 a little bit earlier, are looking very, very stable here. Crescent and Raiko as well, sitting above that 60 HP in Stage 4. A very good spot to be.
Yeah, but this is one of the hot ones here, right? I mean, we are going to be seeing the Rengar composition coming through right now. Ging has the most important item for Swain in the Morello, but does not have that Infinity Edge for the Rengar. And on top of that as well, no Essence composition here. Didn't get any augments that could, help him give him an emblem. Didn't get one of the spats on the earlier carousels either, for example, here. So you're probably hoping for like a Chaos Dragon here, which players very rarely will hope for a Chaos Dragon. But any specific item here from a Chaos Dragon would almost help Ging elevate himself into the next level of the game.
And I was going to hope for a sword in this next carousel. That being said, no item priority. This is how TFT balances players that are doing very good in this game, have a lot of HP. You get to pick last for your item component in the carousel. So unfortunate for Ging. That being said, sometimes the exact item you want is, luckily left up for you on the carousel. So we'll see if luck favors him in this next carousel coming up. But for this fight right here, Swain trying to do his best. The Morello's there, but unfortunately, Ging, or maybe not so unfortunately, because now he bounces down in the item pick. He's now third to pick there alongside Raiko.
That's just the one sword here. We did see Darkest now is slowly but surely trying to guarantee the transition.
Thank you, Unid.
Well, there was only one board, one sword, and well, Unid needed that, so that's just what it is. But we are going to see now Darkest transitioning into those 4 dragon aspects here. Getting something like a Guardian spat onto a Terra, for example, is going to help elevate that composition by a whole lot, potentially. A lot of open spats still as well. I think that's the major talking part now. The previous carousel had 3 spats on it. All of them were taken, but none of them have been committed so far.
Oh, what a shop. This is looking quite spicy. I was a Jade Forcer a few patches ago. If I see this shop, I'm not sure what would happen to me. I would get very, very excited. 2 Shiou-Yus, 1 Siphon as well. But unfortunately for Darkest, I think he has a pretty good idea of where he's going. Shiou-Yu could fit in a 4-dragon board alongside something like a Rakan, for example. You have the Guardian Emblem. You have the Mystic with Shiou-Yu as well. But for the time being, it looks like Darkest has a different idea.
Yeah, and the big thing here is that where you're normally going to be slotting in Shiou-Yu, the board that Darkest is going for right now really wants to have the Evoker, and which is why the Seraphine is going to be the priority and also is going to be the carrier of that Guardian Emblem, just to guarantee that Azul is going to cast continuously, because with no mana item on it so far, you really do need that 2 Evoker to really help this comp elevate itself.
And you really need to buy time, and that's what Six Guardians does so well. The recent buff to that tier of the Guardian tier makes it so that you're able to have these fights last this much longer. Graves, despite all the damage he does normally, not able to even break through the front line of Idus and the Rakan. One of the most, I'm not going to say slept on units, because every high-level player knows how good Rakan is, but overall one of the units that isn't so flashy but does so much in every single team fight. And the Swain there also does so much. Kenobi takes another big hit, the little bouncing ball of water knocks him down to 11 HP. Unid at 10. Has the French dominance come to an end on day 1, game 1? It looks like that might be the case. Both French players currently at the bottom of the standings.
I mean, you could argue that's been the case for the entire season, right? Like we haven't really seen that massive French performance. Think back to Golden Spatula Cup #1. One French player made like the top 16. That was Kenobi, right? Like that was such a huge switch for us. We were like, okay, is France just gone now? Like, did everyone else learn how to play TFT? They have kind of come back into it and have been the most represented country, both in the finals as well as on some of the GSCs. But it wasn't really like that level dominance. Again, there are 3 other lobbies being played right now as we speak, and that picture could be completely different because you have Volta, Potterball, Lekoko, and Double 61 in those, and they could just be absolutely tearing it up right now.
And we're seeing Lelouch here with that Jewel Lotus, with that Guardian Crown as well, able to try and find his way into a similar board that Darkest had. This is one of the stronger boards to reach at this point in Stage 4, and hopefully in Stage 5 get even more dragons in. We'll see if enough damage will come through. Azul still alive, doing his best to deal with his Graves. The Zyra stun comes in, knocks down that Azul a little bit in terms of the attack speed, in terms of the damage being dealt, but once Graves is taken down, well, once the entire board is taken down off of that black hole, it knocks Unid down to a singular point of HP. Any loss now, any amount of fight RNG, any bad matchup, and your game 1 is an 8th, and that is not a good start. Although, for his credit, we have 10 games. There's still going to be no reset today, so you have a chance to still, of course, make it to day 2 and still have a chance to fight for that day 3 spot.
That's a Titan's Resolve here, but there's no... Yeah, he does have the healing option. Titan Resolve Giant Slayer is not too bad. Could even decide, you say, you know what, this Locket is not going to move it enough for me. I would rather have it be another different item here. Could be a frontline item, could be a mana gain item for the Seraphine.
And this is it, just has a few more rolls, needs 2 more Seraphines to really hit a big power spike. They're able to get the Reforge. I think this is not going to do quite enough in terms of the blue buff and the Ionic Spark. I guess another reroll is going to be coming in here, another Reforge rather.
The big thing here, you're not really talking about, David, right, was the fact this gave Edge of Night, which is like the best item for Graves. Being able to drop that aggro is so big, and getting that Titan's Resolve on top of that as well here, this is a massive one for Graves. Like, this was a really, really fortunate and really smart use, right? Like, we say fortunate, but I would just slam, the Giant Slayer and the Titan Resolve and be like, you know what, I'm fine with it, but, rerolling that singular bow just gave Unique a fighting chance. And I say that as he is going to be going into Ging's board right now, but on paper, this board does look really strong.
Rengar 2 is doing his best, but not onto the Graves just yet. Graves almost taking down the false tank. Swain, of course, is the real tank in this Darkflight comp, and now Graves is onto the Swain. If Graves is able to take down the Swain, everything else should be easy cleanup. Rengar now trying to change his attack pattern there, but still Graves alive. Can't quite deal with the Swain. The Dragonlings able to continuously heal the Swain. The JG helping as well. The Titan Resolve, and that's going to be it. Unique taken down in 8th place. Kenobi taken down in 7th. And France, unfortunately for the massive viewer base we have from France, is just not doing so hot in this game 1. Both players from France take the last 2 spots in the standings. And now we have the fight for the top 6 spots. And for most of these players, the top 4. That's what you want to aim for.
Yeah, Lelouch also has that 5 Shimmer Scale in action right now, but he actually made he chose to take that spatula that he got from a carousel and turn it into a Shimmer Scale spat, and with double combat Shimmers, that does make sense to go for, right? It might seem weird to have the G-Mancer staff on, Goldmancer staff, sorry, on the Idas, but Idas actually does scale quite well with AP to buff up the heals and the shields. And for a while, people were like, if you can afford it, jam an Archangel staff onto that Idas and see the magic happen. So pretty good spot for Lelouch right now, even though he is at 24 HP. Does need to 2-star this board, I think that's the big thing. But with that potential gold generation coming through from those Shimmer Scale items, there might still be hope.
Aesol still left, untouched. Oh, never mind. Caster Curse coming in. Rengar jumps onto the Aesol. The last little sliver of damage comes through. Zac got buffed, but I think not quite enough to take down a Rengar 2, a Swain 2, fully itemized carries and tanks for Ging. And that will be Lelouch getting a big hit here. And I think Lelouch, we can agree, had a very good spot early on to say he has clear direction. If he makes it to level 9, fantastic. But if he falls somewhere along the way, as we're seeing here, currently only level 8 with 27 gold to work with, this is a spot where you say, if I can get top 4, I'm, starting up the fireworks, because that's a great, great result for a game like this one where you're not quite able to make it to level 9.
Yeah, but again, worth noting, right, when we started to talk about that, below him in the standings was Matula, right? And Matula, 46 HP, and has been streaking. And that was the HP that the last time that we saw him, right? And again, figuring out how he's going to produce his level 9 is going to be the big thing to look out for. But again, with the continuous, upgrades coming through with the components, with the full items now, I assume he's moved on to 12 Astral.
Ooh, the Zephyr's big. The Zac gets turned up into the air. It's a triple stack tank, so all of a sudden a few more units might be taken down in the process here. Raiko, currently sitting at 55 HP, going to try and take down and eliminate Lelouch in 6th place in this game 1. Aesol, though, still left untouched, and it looks like it's going to be enough time that has been bought here by the Guardians for Aesol to get one last Black Hole cast and eliminate every single unit on the board and allow for Lelouch to stay alive for just a few more turns, maybe get a little bit more gold to at least get this Idas 2-star.
Absolutely here. And Ging right now, I think, is the big question mark for most of the lobby, right? This is a pretty strong board just in general. And you can see Doc is here. Haskin level 9 is on 30 gold, but is trading that HP for gold as of right now. For a lose streak, but is level 9, 30 gold. And now that is a lot of spatulas to look out for right here, right now, because even that additional Tempest can be pretty useful for some of those people that are going to transition into the 4 Dragon boards with just helping.
Skill scorn can be appealing for Raiko, considering it hovering. He does end up picking it up. Can maybe change out his comp a little bit, take out the Lily in that case if he is going for that skill scorn comp. Or maybe, I guess, 6 skill scorn not really a possibility anymore. Would have loved to have it despite the nerfs that he got hit with a few patches ago. Still very, very strong. But we are seeing here Matelas, the opposite side of the coin from Lelouch, has the gold to work with, is able to use that Astral to great effect, and is now going to be able to go level 9 in just a few turns, and has enough health to really stall out, to buffer. Any losses he might get here won't be definitive. Going to level 9 in stage 6, and then able to roll down to get a stronger board thanks to this Mage Astral comp.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting because you could potentially argue that his level 9 is literally just going to be him leveling, putting in the Azul, transferring the items on that Varus over to the Aurelion Soul, which again, Mage Azul, we know what it can do. It is pretty strong, especially when you are going to get that AP amplification from those higher tiers of the Mage.
The battle of the Astrals, Azul on one side against the rest of his Astral family on the other for Matelas. If Matelas is able to win this fight, it's so important for many reasons. That's one less player he's fighting with to get those top 4 spots, but also those Azuls go back into the pool. Lux putting in so much work with the Rabadons, with the Archangels, with the JG. The Azul gets taken down. The Idas, this is just a formality. And Lelouch, unfortunately, the Polish player, taken down in 6th. The Azul's back into the pool, and that puts Matelas in a spot to maybe even contest for a first place in this Game 1.
Absolutely, and again, we've been talking about the power level of this comp. It's been kind of one of our main talking points, as you were talking about earlier. I said talking a lot. You know, that's what I do. We talk about TFT, David, so talk about this board.
Well, I see more Azul. You know, we all know Aoshin, the Lightning Rain, as the definitive ult you don't want to be seeing in the late game, because usually it spells a lot of danger for most of your units. They get wiped off of the board, but in this case, Azul has been the preference, but not for Raiko. Raiko, of course, leaning into that warrior tree with the Knife's Edge, with the Electro Charge, with the Sunfire board. Very good combat augments, allowing forward units like the Yasuo, like the Olaf to really shine. That being said, it's not a full scale storm comp. You went level 8 instead. You teched in the Warrior, the Yasuo, and not really going for that Olaf 3 just yet. And big Zephyr.
Yeah, and again, something that's not worth highlighting here as well for Ginger. We're talking about how he was lacking that emblem. We didn't clock it, but this means that now he gets 10% because he has the Kiana, but he also gets to sacrifice it for the Dark Flight Essence here, and with a lack of anti-heal besides that, you know, the Pantheon, and as well as, you know, there is a Yasuo. But again, different fights and different positioning mechanics going down, and no Zephyr landing on the Swain. That fight could potentially change.
And Raiko also considering going level 9, has a chance to roll for that Yasuo too, but I think wants to get this Bard in once. I think has the HP so to do it, and very good matchup against that Swain there, because Swain, all of these mega tanks, when they're facing up against a Yasuo can just execute once that tank is the last unit left alive. So it's going to be a very good matchup for Raiko, I think, all throughout this stage 5 and stage 6 that's coming up very soon. Rageblade, what do you think about this item for this comp right now?
It's a hot one, right? Because there's not going to be necessarily a great user of it. It's, generally speaking, attack speed is never bad in TFT because it's mana generation. So wherever you would like that to land, I think is going to be the big thing. And again, kind of figuring out, are you going to survive and make it to stage 7? Because if not, then it does really matter where you put it. It could be under the Diana, right? Already has some of that attack speed stacked up with that Rune's Hurricane. Could be going on to even the Bard now that has been put into play, just to get that cast off quicker, just to, you know, to get that massive CC lockdown into play potentially. But again, even the Pantheon here, you can make a case for it. And Crescent, he's playing the Yone reroll without RFC, without the, you know, any scroll weapons. Just been playing with the Tiamat and just combat augments in general. Here he's going to be playing the 6 Warrior Vertical, David.
It's not the most highly rated comp right now. It's not a comp that you're, you know, saying, hey, I'm going to try and go for this at the beginning of the game. But if you find yourself in a spot to go for it, this is the case for Crescent. I think really a 4th place would be, you know, a good result considering the rest of the comps and the power level and kind of the spikes some of these players are hitting. And we're seeing why here. I think Crescent, this might be his last fight. I think that's going to be it for the Russian player, and that is going to be the case here. Stage 6, you take a whole lot more damage per unit left alive on your opponent's side of the board, and Crescent takes a 5th, which isn't the end of the world. You're adding up these points. Anything above a 6, really, in terms of consistency, is going to be good as long as you're able to get a few firsts and seconds along the way in the 10 games we'll be seeing in day 1 and day 2. And now Swain trying to do his best up against 2 other tanks, but the Earthquake from Terra do a whole lot of damage. The Dragonlings, the Dragon Master's Decree from that Swain, trying to continuously heal the Swain, the Morello, stopping any kind of shielding and healing from the Idas, but it's not quite going to be enough for Ging, and Darkus will be taking the win there.
That was a tie.
It was a tie. You are correct. I did not see the damage coming in on Ging or Darkus' side as well, but 2 Turkish players in the top 4, Wida.
Yeah, I mean, and we were doing a little bit of talking earlier on. And again, Turkey as a region has always kind of been on the fringes. Like we've always talked a lot about Ging, right? Two championship qualifications. You don't get there by being a bad player, right? He's been like 2.2 KLP on the Turkish server, was almost pushing 2 KLP just the other week on EU West. A player that has always just been seen as one of the strongest in the region. And there's just been like good talent coming through. Dark is someone as well. Like Saynar has been 1 point away from a championship qualification before. Turkey as a whole is just a very good region.
This fight's so important. Rengar jumping into that backline. Varus CC is massive, trying to kill the Lux, but Lux just does too much damage. The burst comes through right as Rengar lines up with it right in front of that Lux, and Matelas proving why he is the strongest player, why he's been streaking for so long in these late stages. 46 HP, win streak still going. 2 players taken down in this last round. Ging ends up taking that 4th place. Raiko ends up 3rd, and it will now be Darkest versus Matelas. And Matelas is trying to roll. No, we can't possibly get an ASOL 3 game on the tournament. I'm not even going to try and cast her Blessed or cast her Curse. It is impossible. We cannot be so spoiled.
I mean, the only way that would be possible, right, is that they start sacking the stage here for that is not Volta and Data. We did have a very similar 1v1 between those two at the Super Brawl. But that is obviously not going to be the case here, as we are going to be looking going in here. Madla de Volta, fantastic player. It was so close. He's actually not really so close, but he is sacking to try to get to the point where he can get that. But the issue is, on the other side of the field, there's also going to be an ASOL there.
Matelas is playing with his food in this case here. Darkest, strong, but maybe not quite strong. Nothing on Matelas. We'll see if he's able to even win this fight. The Shroud is very big against this comp that has been set up here by Matelas, but the horizontal setup means that it's not that impactful, not hitting so many different carries at the same time. Lux still dealing so much damage. The Archangels continues to stack more and more damage coming through. The ASOL is still left alive. If this last proc can't kill Lux, yeah, that's going to be it. For Dark, it's going to be a massive chunk of damage here at 6-3, but I think Darkest will still stay alive. 8 HP for the Turkish player. Switzerland versus Turkey. I think if you ask anyone last at the MEA, this will be kind of the final showdown in Game 1. It's not quite the nationalities you expect. You expect to see France, you expect to see maybe Germany now in this case, Spain as well. But it will be Turkey versus Switzerland to find out who starts Game 1 and this Day 1 with just 1 foot already in those top spots.
Yeah, absolutely right. And again, Method has been one of those players that has always been like towards like in the challenger lobbies, but this set has really started to elevate themselves in a competitive context. And we're kind of seeing that pay off now. Technically speaking, he might have made his board weaker. You could make an argument that he made the board stronger because he was able to take out I put in an extra set of units here. But now the transition here is going to come through for Darkest. They are trying to see if they can find just that Aoshin 2 maybe, but that's not going to be the case here. They do have the Shroud, which again could be a big game changer, but potentially might not be the case.
The Shroud comes in from both sides, the Lilia and the Shio-Yu. The Golden Scales and the Earthquake in the front line, they're helping the tanks stay alive. The 4 Guardians are online as well, the 4 Dragons, but I'm not sure if it'll be enough for Darkest. The Lightning Rain comes in, the Shielding comes in, very clutch. The Gunblade will be healing the tanks here, will be healing the Idas, but Lux still proves to be a fantastic carry after these buffs. I had a question, I now have an answer, Weeda. Lux reroll is definitely viable, and maybe a combo we'll be seeing a whole lot of throughout this tournament. Darkest taken down, Matelas de Volta gets that first win for Game 1. I imagine Makes, who picked Matelas as her winner for this tournament, is very, very happy to see the fantastic start this Swiss player has had. And really a great game of TFT. So many different comps we saw played.